Looking to build your team's capability in service design, research, or human-centered design or service design and AI courses? This is HCD offers practical, hands-on training for organizations, tailored to your context, not off the shelf. Teams at Verizon, AIB, Flutter, AccentureSong, Gusto, local government, government departments, and NGOs across Europe have all leveled up through these programs. To explore what's possible for your team, book a free 15-minute call. See the link in the show notes to find out more. Now let's get back to that episode.
10x your service design offering with Smaply. Take 20% off any order with This Is HCD 20 off. Let's superpower you and your design team's potential. Sign up at smaply.app. Enjoy the episode from your friends at Smaply, helping support This Is HCD podcast.
Hey folks, and welcome back to another episode of This Is HCD. My name is Jerry Scullion and I'm a human-centered service design practitioner based in the beautiful city of Dublin, Ireland. Now, if you've ever walked through life and if you've ever felt like you don't really fit in, and maybe you experience the world a little bit differently, or that you're constantly observing from the edges, this conversation might hit home in a powerful way. Now, I'm joined by Dr. Rami Kaminski, a psychiatrist and author of The Gift of Not Belonging, and founder of the Otherness Institute. Now, his work explores why some people simply cannot be shaped by group identity, and why this difference isn't a flaw, but a genuine gift. Now, I was introduced to Rami's work by Rachel Deacus whilst we were away speaking at Service Design and Gov, and I bought the book instantly. I've never really felt attached to the terms introvert or extrovert. People get to meet me and they say, oh, he's quite extroverted, but believe it or not, I'm neither. I now basically call myself an otherness, something that lives in the other. And I wanted to share this new way of thinking that Rami has pioneered. But in this episode, you'll learn why some of us are wired as non-belongers, and how otherness can become emotional freedom instead of pain, and why labels can help us feel seen, and the surprising truth between empathy and connection, and what happens when we stop trying to fit into systems that were never really built for us. This conversation opens up parts of myself I'd never really been truly able to articulate, and I'd hope it does the same for you. If you enjoy this episode, please do subscribe, and if you can, go along to the links in the show notes. Take that survey. It might actually provide some help and clarity and understanding how you see the world. I found it to be very, very interesting. The book was fantastic. I read it and I felt like I was being seen for the first time in a very, very long time. And I'll put a link to that as well in the show notes. I know you're going to enjoy it. Let's jump straight in. Rami, I'm delighted to finally get to speak with you. I bought this book with my own money. Okay, right? I heard about this. I know people say, like, you got these books sent for free. I bought this one myself because my good friend Rachel Deacus, who is an incredible designer and a social worker based in Chicago, we were hanging out together. We were doing a conference in Edinburgh about 4 weeks ago called Service Design and Government. And we had a conversation about introvert and extrovert. And she had seen something about the word otherness that led me to purchasing this book. She sent me all the details of the Otherness Institute. So we're going to come to all of that now in a few minutes, but maybe we'll start off. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what you do.
Yeah, well, so in New York City, I'm a psychiatrist. And I have a very long career, despite my youthful look.
I know.
But
like me.
We look like twins, but sorry, I don't mean to insult you. But in any event, I've been working, I started in Mount Sinai, and I was working there for many years, and then I became the medical director of the agency that controls all the psychiatric or mental health in New York State. And then later on, and I was also a professor of psychiatry at Columbia University. And basically that's where I am. So I have, my private practice where I see patients. I work in a hospital. I teach.
Yeah.
Usual, nothing special.
Lovely. And one of the things that, as I said, brought us together is this book, The Gift of Not Belonging. And when I emailed you saying, hey, listen, look, this book feels like it was written for me. And you were like, okay, interesting. Let's talk about this. But where did that idea of otherness come from? Can you walk me through where the interest began and what made you first notice this pattern in people?
Yeah. Well, the story is so good that it's almost like made up, but that is true. So I am an introvert, so I grew up and usually, the first 10 years of life was just regular. And then the second decade, adolescent was very, very difficult. And, in a way, I always think that had there been something wrong, probably kind of wrong, and I would have been, rejected or outcast, I probably would not have, I just think, nobody likes me and that's okay, what can I do? But I was very popular, I was an in person, I was well liked, I liked school, and yet I always felt that I am an outsider. And that discrepancy was, for me, the number one psychological problem in my life. And so I think, as I always like to joke, had they been a dermatologist, I would have never thought about it at all. I would just think that I'm weird and that is my lot in life. And so I don't feel like I'm belonging to anything other than. But then I started seeing people in my practice that had, curiously, similar problems to what I had. And I started thinking about it in a very different way. It's not like only me, but maybe there is something here. I remember thinking this way. And so I started looking into it. And next patient started thinking about it more and so forth. And, then 40 years later, I felt that, I have something to say. And I want to say it. And I said it. Othervert, the word itself, was chosen in the last minute because I used to think about it as otherness, But otherness people sounded so awkward that I did. So I was with some friends, we kicked around some names, and I liked othervert very much because it does sound like a vert, like Jung. And B, it really does mean a person that faces elsewhere. This is the essence of my life. I'm never facing to the group.
One of the things, like I see a psychologist or a psychotherapist actually every month, and I spoke about your work with them there a number of times over the last couple of weeks. And their question to me, what is it about the fact that this excites you, like that the label introvert? Why does it speak to me? And trying to understand that why that sits behind it. What are your thoughts on having another label for people to apply to themselves? Is that something that you're aware that, it gives positives and negatives? Is that something you've considered?
Of course. I worked most of my life, by the way. I am a schizophrenia expert. And
Okay.
so I'm very used to working with people that are outcast and labeled, and stigmatized. So curiously, most of my advocacy work has been against stigma and labeling and so on. Now, one of the things I think that being an introvert is helpful, and you may know it from your own experience, is that the fact that people say, let's say, label bad doesn't faze me. People
Yeah.
say a lot of things that, there is this kind of intellectual laziness that after a while you get an idea. Let's say labeling is bad. Then everybody says labeling is bad. And then you realize labeling is bad. But the question is, what does it
Give
replace?
you.
What does it replace? Because I used to think of myself, I'm saying it lovingly, but, it's weird. I did have a label. It's not like I didn't have a label. I just didn't know what I was.
Yeah.
Why am I so weird? What is it that makes simple things very difficult for me? Something that seemingly everyone else enjoys and I don't, and why is it, and so on and so forth. And so, the label is maybe not good for the rest of the world. Another label, you want to label, but it's very good for otherness,
Yeah.
because, and that is my answer on a regular basis. I want to say this, Gary, in a general way, and it's very interesting because some people say to me, it's very strange. It seems like you just thought about it, observed it, and wrote about it.
Mm-hmm.
The research, whereas the resources, the literatures,
Absolutely.
and I always say, I am the person that writes about no need for communal consensus. And you tell me that I should have waited first for the consensus and then allow myself to write about it. I just did it the other way around, and the book, the truth of the matter is the book is really written for introverts.
Yeah.
So I was hoping, and this is what I see, and you are a very good example for that if you are an introvert or someone that knows introverts, you would immediately recognize yourself in it. I didn't want to write a self-help book. I didn't want to write 12 steps to recognize your introversion. I wanted to write a book that if you are an introvert and you read it, it will be so poignant and so real to you. You never have to talk to me. You talk to me, but you don't have to call me. You don't have to see me. You just sit there and say, "This is me," and then you start thinking about it. I should tell you that actually one of them was from Ireland. I get a lot of letters all the time from people.
Wow.
Convey. I would say by now I have over 1,500 letters.
Wow.
And more than 30,000 registrants in our, otherness institute. So it must have hit some sort of
nerve.
Yeah.
Can I tell you what my response was to my psychotherapist when they said, "What does it give me?" It gave me the sense of being seen. Was my response. Like for a long time, like you just said, like I echoed a lot of the same things. I was like, people would refer to some of my sort of responses to social situations as being abnormal or weird or whatever word you want to use it. So I felt seen, and that's a really powerful sentiment to carry when you've lived your entire life of feeling like you don't belong. But the characteristics that you kind of list in the book, I just want to give our listeners a little bit of an overview. And if it's okay, just give me a few minutes to read some of these things out, like a deep individuality, a strong internal compass and sense of self that doesn't really conform to group norms, a heightened self-awareness, a constant meta-consciousness, a feeling of observing oneself in relation to others. This often leads to overthinking in social interactions and sensing subtle shifts in tone or behavior. Number 3, empathic sensitivity and acute ability to read emotional atmospheres and perceive unspoken tensions. This sensitivity can both be a gift for connection and insight and source of exhaustion. Definitely. Moral and existential depth, a tendency to question why behind systems, authority, and convention. People high in otherness often pursue meaning, fairness, and authenticity over approval or success. 5, creative divergence, thinking laterally and intuitively, seeing patterns and possibilities others miss, Otherness often manifests as unconventional problem solving or original thought. Number 6, alienation from norms, feeling out of step with mainstream culture, whether it's values, energy, or priorities. This may create loneliness, misunderstood intentions, or a sense of being misfit but awake. Number 7, resistance to conformity, a quiet or sometimes fierce refusal to fit into expected roles or social masks. Conformity feels like self-betrayal rather than safety. Number 8, high emotional intensity, experiences and emotions are felt vividly. Joy and pain are both amplified. This intensity can drive purpose, empathy, and artistry, but also burnout and withdrawal. 9, perceptual breadth, seeing complexity in human behavior, systems, and relationships, noticing what others overlook. This often draws other-minded people to fields like psychology, art, research, or design. Ding, 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 ding. And number 10, search for belonging without assimilation, a longing to connect deeply while remaining fully oneself, not diluted or fixed. When found, this form of belonging feels transcendent. They're the 10 characteristics that were noted as I went through this book. A lot of them, like you've got a survey on your website, Rami, that when it was sent to me, I can't remember my score. I think it was 232 over 280. And I was like, well, I'm going to put a link to that. If you're listening to this, there's a link to that in the show notes, or if you're watching on YouTube, it'll be in the description. And I know they do say at the very end of the survey, put your email in here and get an email sent back to you and you get your results. That is not spam. I did it, and the details that came back to me were more elaborate and high value. So I encourage you to put your email address in there to get that PDF that's sent back to you. Now, going back to these pieces, of those 10 characteristics, is there anything that you think that I might have missed out on, Rami, in those 10 observations?
No, I don't think you missed at all. I mean, you see, one of the things that I always try to explain and is that, when you're an autrovert, it's really, the autrovert means not having a communal identity or a sense of belonging, the way that cultural conditioning is, imbues in everyone. Just didn't work for me. Now, the rest of the traits have to do with this. This is the essential part, that you don't belong. You don't belong, and it's very strange, but you don't belong. And all the rest, including some of the psychological difficulties that can come up with it, have to do with the fact that you live in a world of joiners and belongers, and you are not. And so much so, I had an interview the other day with someone in Italy, and she said to me, what would be if the whole world were authoverts? There was no community at all. And I said to her, it's very interesting. Even I cannot think how it's going to be. I mean, I am also so into the communal aspect of humanity, so to speak, that I really cannot fathom how the world would be if everyone was introvert. Except for one thing, I must say, and maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I said to her, is I guess there wouldn't be any wars, But I don't know. I mean,
why do you think that?
Because in order to, and that's a very good question. You see, communality, which is being not only extolled, but, at least seen as the only way to be or to succeed or to exist, is very nice and very important. I did not write a book against communality at all. But there is the dark side, which is tribalism. And I think that without tribalism, it's going to be very hard to have a war, For instance, I never see anyone as representative of anything. To me, you're Gary Scalia, and I am Rami. I mean, I don't represent anything other than myself. And to me, you don't represent anything other than yourself. And so I have now happen to enjoy our conversation, and I think that it is true that, we're probably similar in this way. And, it does give you a sense of not belonging, but connection.
Yeah.
I think that if you really look at people as individuals, and I'm not trying to be touchy-feely, I really think that if you don't group people, which I don't, you cannot hate them, or love them or anything. For me, I would never look at a group and want to kill the group or think that they're inferior just because I don't see the group. So I think tribalism is the reason that we have wars. We are taught that it's us and them. That's what we focus. And so that is, to me, the reason why, if everyone was an introvert, maybe people will kill each other, or fight. I don't know. I'm not saying that I can't, but there wouldn't be a war. I mean, this organized, when you do the, what is called outsourcing your morals to the group, I only fulfill the command or whatever. So
it's interesting, like when you're speaking about tribalism and our culture, the acceptance of being different is something that I still see culture finding it difficult to accept. What do you think is causing that for people and for society? What is holding that back from the accepting of the other?
That's a very good question. We could spend the next 7 hours.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. I don't care.
Because I think that, as you said, like tribalism is one of the reasons,
it's
one of the many reasons for war. But like, if we can learn to accept the other, and otherness as being part of that,
I'll tell
it'd be
you,
really good to get your perspective.
it's very easy. When I spent some time in London in the 80s. Did some training there. And on the underground, there was a poster. I have it, actually. I found it. And the poster shows a group of toddlers sitting in the diapers, very sweet, ramrod. And you could see they're all ethnicities. And there is a caption above the head, which says, "The only place in England where there is no racism." I was deeply, deeply affected by it. And then I realized that this is my argument, by the way, which I really think it's going to be hard to negate. The argument is as follows. We're born with the attachment instinct, but we're not born with the understanding of belonging to anything. I mean, a group or otherwise. There's no baby that is religious, nationalistic, racist. Babies don't understand power, status. And so we are all born non-belongers. That's the truth. I mean, we're not. And then with the language and, become a toddler, we are being routed towards sociality. You have to be sociable, stand, don't barge, this is Timmy's, not yours, and share, which is very important, obviously, because you need to get along with the rest. And introverts are very, very friendly and nice people. It's not like, the two of us. I mean, I'm a nice guy, you're a nice guy, it's obvious. So, but at some point, it's about the age of 4 or 5, we start to learn that there is a group and we belong to this group. So there is what we call cultural conditioning. It's happened everywhere all across the world. My children underwent, I did, you did, everyone. And so the cultural conditioning is not teaching the children to belong per se. And let's argue that belonging is, an instinct. I'm not sure that's true, but even if it is, but you have to know what to belong to. And that's where the problem starts. Because, your parents don't say, well, Gary, welcome to the world. Here are 7 major religions. Please choose one. Here's, countries that you can, no, you get their mores, their ideas, their group, their everything from them,
Yeah.
So you need to be taught to separate between people. You need to be taught that there are us and them. It's not something you're born with. And because there's no way that a baby or a child would be able to live alone until a certain age without cultural conditioning, it's just possible. We all are subjected to it. Go ahead.
But don't we need each other? So like this is the caveman, we needed each other to provide food and shelter and all of those intrinsic things that are really important for survival.
Yes.
If we're all happy to live on our own,
but
you
see the thing about otherness is not about living on your own or being unattached or unaffiliated. It's not about that. It's about the idea that you should share your identity with your group.
Okay.
And that's what you're told. You're told you have to give up your own needs for the needs of the group, your group. Okay? And sooner or later, you start having a sense of shared fate. At the end of the book, I write about old age and death. And the idea is that I think many people join the group because they feel a sense of shared fate and safety. I mean, I don't feel safety in the group, but I can understand it. The problem that when you really, really look at it and you really strip it down to something that cannot be denied is you're born alone, you live alone, and you die alone. It's undeniable. Even if everyone around you loves you very much, they're not going to die with you. They're going to put you in. And so the idea that the group is leaving you behind is very scary to people. Now, but you asked another question, which is, isn't communality important? And the truth is, yes, it was very important when we were hunters-gatherers, and probably throughout years. But the communality was more people around you, your family, it was your group. Now, we don't need it. I mean, I get my milk without milking the cows or, knowing the milkman. So we don't need this level of, and actually most of the belonging now, especially after 25 years old, is virtual. You have kinds of groups that you can belong to and so on and so forth. We don't need it as much as we needed it in the beginning.
Yeah.
And certainly, again, I want to highlight that it's not the fact that they want us to belong. That's benign. It's what they want us to belong to. So.
Now, you call the book The Gift of Not Belonging, okay? But I listed out 10 characteristics, one of which was belonging, I believe. Why did you call out not belonging as the title of the book? That's question number one. And then second two is kind of helping us unpack what it means to belong. So I'd love to understand why the book is called The Gift of Not Belonging, first of all.
Because, it's still true, as you said before. We think of belonging as something so essential to the human society that the idea of not belonging is always seen as a problem. There are people who don't belong. Schizophrenic patients, there are people that have neurological cognitive problems, people who are strange in quote unquote. In other words, sometimes it's just because of the skin of your, the color of your skin, whatever is the reason. People don't belong to groups, but usually it's not because they don't want to, it's because they, at some point, perhaps very early, were expelled from the group. Otherverts or non-belongers like me, I never made the shift to belong to anything. I stayed the same way I was when I was 4. I wanted to belong, by the way. I did not have any philosophical ideas at the age of 4. I very much wanted to belong. I did everything to belong, but I couldn't. And so there is a segment of the population, that is my argument, that don't belong by the dint of not being able to be, if you may, brainwashed by cultural conditioning.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I have a lot of thoughts why, and we're doing research on this, but the bottom line is that non-belonging by design or by desire, or it's just not belonging because you don't belong, is considered suspect,
Yeah.
There's something strange about you not belonging, even though you're nice and friendly, and I live in a community, I'm not, a strange loner,
Yeah.
But the idea that I have no religion, I have no nationality. That's why when you ask me about my background, it's very hard for me to talk about it because I can tell you about me. But the idea that I was born here and grew up there, is meaningless to me.
Absolutely. I noticed that.
Yeah.
By the way, I noticed.
Yeah. So that is the thing that I wanted to say. Not belonging has been suspect.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
And it's on that, like, whenever we ask people that question, they're looking to build up a sort of a tapestry of safety, like saying, okay, I can understand a little bit about them. And the second thing on that point was whenever I've been like literally your biggest kind of supporter, telling everyone about this book, okay? And when I say to them, they say, well, what is it? And I says, well, it's usually the sense of just not feeling connected or belonging. And I said it to one of my my son's friends' dads who were in the community as we were watching the football training going on. And I noticed just a small little kind of facial reaction that I was like, they may perceive that as being, I'm not appreciative of feeling welcome. And it's one of the slights that I've noticed where people kind of saying, oh, Jerry doesn't belong, like, and they can't believe it, almost like they've got some sort of restriction bias that's happening where they're like, really? Like, why wouldn't you feel like you belong? And it's almost like it's a slight. What do you think is happening in that scenario? And I know it's hypothetical because you can't put yourself in my shoes, but when you say to people that you struggle with the sense of belonging in the world, it just seems to have this kind of like shocking factor. Like, how can you not feel like you belong?
But I'll answer in a slightly different way. You see, one of the gifts of not belonging is that you really don't need to lead your life by consensus, by book, by the group validation.
Yeah.
So, I'll give you a funny story. If you don't mind, I don't know how much time we have.
Let's go.
Okay.
It's Friday.
I have time. So here's what. Maybe we should. It's later by you, but anyhow. I must say, I know it's corny, but my most favorite drink is Guinness. And I, in Dublin, once made a very big fool of myself after a few. But so, the story is as follows. I like, as an introvert, I like to be, quirky. I think it's a mechanism to deal with life. So I'm really a very serious, professor. Live normal life, somewhat bohemian. Live with a musician, but I like to be quirky and to say crazy things sometimes, just so it deflects. Let's say Kaminski is a character. I sometimes say it. So I came to one of the lectures one day, and I said, guys, there's a group of residents, and I said, I have great news. And they said, what? I said, I found out that I can fly. And they say, what? I said, yeah, I can fly. I can fly like a bird. I can, wherever I want. Really? I said, yeah. And they said, well, show us. And I said, no, I haven't tried it yet. I just know I can do it. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, so long as I don't need to convince anyone that I can fly, okay? And I just say this to myself, I can enjoy for the rest of my life the possibility that I can fly, because I don't need to convince you, I don't need to show you, and I don't need to convince myself because I already decided. So I'm not going to go on a fifth floor window and try to fly, But I walk around with this wonderful sense of being able to fly one day if I want to.
Yeah.
And of course, that's just a metaphor, but the idea is that there's really no reason to think about yourself something that is because of some sort of outside mores or ideas. So if people say to me, what do you mean you don't belong? I say, I don't belong. And they say, how can you not belong? I say, well, I can. I am. And that is my advice to all autoverts in the world and other people. I'm not just autoverts, is so long as you don't have to convince anyone about anything, you can feel and think whatever you want. It's when you start to convince them and they say, what do you mean? That's what I say to people, what do you mean you just wrote it? Yeah, I just wrote it.
Yeah.
You don't like it? I'm sorry.
That's the way it is.
Go ahead.
So you mentioned about belonging, and I struggle with belonging as a kind of a thing, because I don't believe I've ever really felt it. When I look at my own life, from people who don't identify as introvert, what does belonging mean to them?
Belonging to them means that they are part of a group.
Yeah.
It could be all kinds of groups. It could be your family, it could be your village, whatever, or it could be, people that, believe in this or that. And all over the world nowadays, the possibilities of groups are, not limited to almost anything.
Yeah.
And so for me, the idea of belonging is not about connection. I think many people confuse connection with belonging. The only difference between me and other people in my everyday life is that I don't have friends just because I happen to work with them for 20 years. Or for me, a friend is someone that I choose as a friend.
Yeah.
And so, and that is also something that sometimes caused problems, because I am affable and nice guy. People like me, I'm like them, but I don't consider them as friends, much like I don't consider another woman as, my wife. I love my wife, and we've been together for many years. And, I chose her and she chose me. We not own each other. We don't belong to each other, but we have a very deep connection.
Yeah.
So introverts, the only thing that is different is that you may have political ideas and, but
ideologies,
but you don't belong to a movement. You're unlikely to be going out on barricades or, what you do, what introverts do is being a canary in a coal mine,
I love it. And one of the things where I said I feel seen, because, in a world of joiners, as you say in the cover of the book, whenever somebody may have expressed a kind of an interest to become a friend or whatever it was, and I'm like, well, I don't want to be friends. I always thought that might have been me just being weird. Okay. But as you said, when you're an introvert, you very carefully select who you let into your world. And now that I know that, it doesn't feel as weird, I guess, or as awkward as I would have felt before knowing this book. So I thank you for that reassurance, because I do come up with some challenges when I tell people about it. Like I say, listen, this is the way I feel about these scenarios, and they don't feel. And I said, well, that's okay. That's okay. You can feel that, but for me, in those scenarios, it's reassuring, and I think that's the biggest testament of the validity of the research that's contained within that. I have a few other questions that I want to ask you about. Like, our listeners are primarily human-centered design and service design practitioners, and what that means is we help organizations identify the true thing that people are looking to get out of an organization, albeit a government, to ensure that the public services that they're accessing to complete a task or a job that they want to get done, whether that be your tax payment or your healthcare, that it's equitable and it's fair and it's ultimately easy to use and accessible for all. Now that we kind of have a better understanding of otherness, and as you said, it's a natural part of being a human, how might organizations, whether that's institutions or workplaces, how might they design environments that value the difference rather than suppress it?
That's a very, very important question. And I don't think that I can answer off the top of my head.
In 20 words or less, Rami, please.
I'm going to shoot myself. No, I say why. Because the thing is, I've always thought about it from the other way around. So here's an othervert. What are the work situation or environment? What is the work environment that, helps you to thrive, which I have all kinds of ideas about. How does an organization organize their services, let's say, so they are human friendly, I don't think it has, it has to do a lot about, I think, otherverts.
Yeah.
And I know it for a fact. I don't want to take your time on that, but I'll tell you, I write it in the book. So it's about the second chance program that I once got. And so the idea is as follows, and I'll say it very quickly. There's a third of the schizophrenic patients are called treatment non-responders because no matter what you do, they don't respond to treatment, remain symptomatic, and end up oftentimes in long-term hospitals. And so I had the schizophrenia. I was running the schizophrenia center, a research center at Mount Sinai, very prestigious. I felt very good about it. And I wanted to dedicate my life to people that are not responders. And with PET scan, everything that, we could throw at technology. And then one day I realized that I'm making a terrible mistake, which is it's really not the patients who do not respond. The patients are not the wrong thing. It's the medications, and they don't respond to the same medications that work for 70% of the patients. But it's not because they don't want to respond. It's because that's not the medication for them, And without getting into a very, very deep discussion, I decided to start something called the Second Chance Program, which is going to hospitals where people are housed for sometimes over 20, 30 years. I'm sure in Ireland it happens the same way. And revisit their condition. I mean, sometimes they've been there for 20 years and things have changed, in terms of medication, but they never get a refresh look at their situation. But the interesting part was, and that's what I wanted to say, I did it. That's why I became the chief psychiatrist. I went to Albany, which in Ireland you don't know, but it's like a very not nice place to live. And that's the capital of the state of New York, and did it. That's a long story, but the interesting thing was, and that is what I wanted to say, is that I had almost everyone around me even though I didn't ask anything for it. I didn't ask for extra money, funding. I said, let's see if we can do it as part of the work naturally.
Yeah.
I would say everyone almost fiercely tried to convince me that not to do it because it's not going to work. And, luckily, even though I was much younger, maybe brazen, I don't know, but luckily I didn't. I'm not. That is never for me a reason not to do it, So, and I did it in very, very successful all over the world. And, I've been out of it for 20 years from this problem.
Yeah.
It's been going on very well. And it made sense that, now nobody, it's a very different way of looking at schizophrenic patients because you don't blame them for not responding.
Absolutely.
And that is what otherverts can do. You could look at the world in a different way. So let's say someone like you walk into a situation and you say to yourself, everyone says the water cooler needs to be here. I'm just a stupid example.
Yeah.
But I see that, and because what happens is once you belong to a group and there is a consensus about something, you may live the rest of your life, let's say 60 more years, never questioning it, and that is the problem. Otherverts always question.
Yeah.
Not because, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that the 10 characteristics that I kind of pulled out, a lot of them fall into the criteria of what I do for a living, which is why I went for dinner with my best friend from school recently, and he was like, "You're the only person I know who does something for a job that truly loves it." And I feel blessed in many ways that I followed my own path in service design, but a lot of the characteristics that you speak about there are intrinsic to service designers. So I believe there's a lot of people listening to this that may identify as other, and it's something that I wanted to call out, hence why I was so interested in getting you on the podcast. Now, one of many key skills as a researcher is the accessing empathy, if you want. I'm not a major lover of the word empathy in design, but we talk a lot about trying to understand the other, and I guess I'd keen to understand, does true empathy require us to connect with our own otherness first? So is otherness, does it exist in everybody? That's the question.
That is, I can answer in two ways. You ask very, very good questions, Gary.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, but still. So two things. First of all, I think we are all born like this, we are all born non-belongers, and we need to be taught to belong, and even more so, as I said, we need to be taught to what to belong to. And so that is one of the things that, non-belongers and so obviously, I say to people sometimes, people are not communal, but, free thinkers and thoughtful people. You don't have to be an introvert to be a free thinker. But I ask them, and, I say, why don't you try meditation, 15 minutes, try to sit back and think about what would have happened had you not belonged, or what do you belong to, 7, 8 groups, and what would have happened had you not belonged to them, just try to fantasize how it used to be, when we were young, very young, and totally unlittered by the Morris and so on and so forth. We were just floating there and being, I don't know how we were, because in a pre-verbal, by the way, that's another thing I write about, that otherverts are much easier for me to have pre-verbal thinking. I don't necessarily have to think in words. I can, again, talk about it for a long time. And if you start thinking about it, you'll see that a lot of your thought, because most people think in words. And so what happens is that, let's say the word love, it's so bastardized. I love my car. I love my wife. I love my children. I love sunset. It's, those words are meaningless and always unsatisfying, in that way. But what the people who don't belong, what they can teach the other people is, if something doesn't work, let's say in an organization, many consultants, I can tell you a joke about consultants, but it's a little bit off color, so maybe off. But
take that off, Mike.
But you get consultants, and they come, and they have a consultant's handbook, and consultants this and everybody has to be 20% this. And otherness actually see something that that everyone saw, but they didn't, think about it this way. Most people live with partial blindness. We add blind spots to our vision of the world, unnecessarily so, just because we want to be like everyone else, And when you don't be like everyone else, and when you cannot be, even more so. I'm not a real, counterculture or something like that. If you look at my life, there's nothing about it. I don't do drugs. Nothing that is unusual about me, except for the fact that I don't belong, and I don't do things, and I don't see things like everyone else does. And
God, I love that.
Yeah.
I love the blind reference, like all these things that we carry with us. Like being able to see the full picture is one of the blessings that I had, when I started to see a psychologist and then a psychotherapist. And one of the pieces that I often question to my own psychotherapist is this this ability to reflect that I have, that I've learned, but also it's a frustration that others don't go on this journey too. And the ability to be able to enter therapy, if you want, that's the term the Americans use. And this struggle that I have, like, why can't others go on this journey as well to learn more about themselves? Because I believe that's one of the most powerful things that you can go on as a human, and really understanding your mind and understanding our own position within the systems that we're part of. And I'd love to get your thoughts on that. Like, how it's probably not our place to encourage people to go on their own journey. Everyone's their own person. I get that. But I'd love to get your thoughts on what might be holding people back, and what can we do to, I guess, open up the channels a little bit more for people to become more self-reflective in terms of what they bring to the systems and culture and society and so forth.
Well, I'll answer. I like to always give a vivid example. I think it's, so I'll give you an example. I have a patient who is autistic. He suffers from, he's very intelligent, but his communication is, flawed, and he's a great guy, and I like him a lot, but he's autistic. And he said to me one day, when we first started, he was very, not suspicious, but I say guarded, and I know it because when somebody has seen 10 psychiatrists, the 11th psychiatrist is already tainted with everything possible, I'm used to it. So I saw him, and he said, blah, blah. I said, I am a specialist on outsiders. I said, I actually wrote a book about it.
He literally did.
Yeah. And he said, yeah. And he said, really? I said, yeah, here's the book, And he said, oh, he didn't read it, but he went home, and the next week he came and he said, you know what? I just realized something. And I said, what? He said, I'm just not a joiner. I'm not a joiner. I said, yes, you're not a joiner. I'm also not a joiner. I said, and he said, you know what, Dr. Kaminski, I want to tell you something. And that is, I get goosebumps when I think about it because it's so beautiful. He said, you are the first psychiatrist. And he's in his late 20s. He started seeing psychiatrists at the age of 3, maybe. He said, you're the only psychiatrist, the first psychiatrist that doesn't try to get me to fit in. And that is the secret. And by the way,
accepting
all of my patients, I never try to get, I mean, it's a journey that you have yourself. The idea that, you have a host of people that cover the same territory as you because they were born in me is meaningless. If you want to be a good therapist and a good psychiatrist, in my opinion, your aim should not be trying to get someone to fit in, but rather to, be able to, look at their own issues or anything that they need to. And that is what is very important about empathy. That is all. Yeah. Because you see, most people offer the kind of empathy that is very shallow. And we actually ask each other, apropos communion, say, put yourself in my shoes. What? That's a big mistake, because you'd still be Gary in my shoes. You're not me. And actually, if you are in my shoes, you may start thinking, if I were him, I would have done it better, And so people say, the empathy that an introvert can bring is becoming the other person. If you even have 20 seconds where you eliminate yourself and you stop existing with your preconceived notions and bullshit, and just look at the person and listen to them and try to see the world really through their eyes, not you looking through their eyes. You can understand the person amazingly well, and you can always say something that will be at least corresponding to how they really feel,
Yeah.
And I think that's
very powerful. I've just one other question. We've spoken about otherness, we've spoken about belonging. The world we're in right now, it seems like there's the gap is getting bigger. Okay. And I'd love to hear from you, what gives you hope at the moment that we're moving towards a world that really celebrates difference rather than fear it?
Well, the assumption is that
there's hope.
There is hope, yeah.
Please tell me there's hope.
There is hope. There is hope. I promise you. But
if not, just lie.
But I mean, I tell you, the problem is as follows. I think that obviously with internet and so forth, it's easier to belong to a group or to find someone, So, and I think that actually the world is becoming more and more conducive to tribalism rather than the other way around,
Radicalization as well.
Yeah, well, but you see, that is the problem that we have, is that I think that one of the things that makes me happy, literally, the book just came out 3 months ago, and the conversation changed in a very strange way. I mean, I did not think it's going to become so, quote unquote, hot, and everybody is going to talk about it, and there's going to be so much buzz. And I didn't think so. I mean, I certainly did not. I mean, I'm happy, but I didn't write it this way. But the interesting thing, which I said to people before, and I say to you too, is that, interestingly, the idea of emotional self-sufficiency and not fitting in the Zuckerberg universe is blasphemous. You should always fit in. There is a group and you have friends, you have 2,000 friends, and the idea that there are going to be many young people that get excited by the idea of emotional freedom, of being untethered to the group and thinking for yourself and perhaps not needing other people to console you all the time. that is the thing that gives me some hope. It's very interesting. I had not expected it. I thought most people would, maybe most people would poo-poo it, that's okay. But I didn't think it's going to be exciting to people that are, just reading about it. So
absolutely.
Who knows, maybe we should. And I'm not saying it in a self-serving way, or maybe it is self-serving, but I do think so. We really should extol the idea of having some people that see things in a different way. Are they right? Are they wrong? Maybe not, but it's a different way because currently, when you look what's happening, let's say in the United States now, the thing that I find to be very, very puzzling is beyond, the Trumpian dystopia and, all the thing. We have now ICE, those people that are, and they go on the street with a full regalia, you think they're commandos in Somalia or something, and they jump on, little old lady that happens to be undocumented immigrant and so forth. They handcuff them, they throw them on the floor, they take them away without any ability to call anybody. And, they want like Mexican people to send to the Sudan, Now, the fact that somebody like Trump can have people that are willing to do those things, we've seen throughout history, it's not unusual. But, there are many people. I've never seen an ICE operation, but there are many people that do, And, if you stop, let's say I jump on the ICE person and I not beat them, but stand passively with 3 other people and not allow them to take this person out or take the person, which some people do, and we have done in a way, take them into our house. You cannot come in and take them away. Why is it that everybody doesn't do it? There is no real danger. What's going to happen maybe in the future, as you'll be executed for trying to help them. And you know why it is? That is my theory. It's because the people that walk around in America and they see the ICE people attacking a Mexican immigrant, they cannot help because of this, teaching us that we belong to a group. They feel is an unconscious relationship and connection to the American agents, ICE agents, than the Mexican.
Yeah.
There's no other way to explain it, why don't you? When you look at if you look at YouTube and do Berlin, the last days, 12 years after everybody ran around and was happy and, whatever, they come out of the rubble, millions of people have been killed. And, little things like, imagine you want to do your dissertation and you'll never be able to finish it because of World War II. The things that people, and yet, nobody said anything. There were a few otherverts who said, like Bonhoeffer, and they killed them, people. And people were cowed into going with those people, with the Nazis. How can it be? Why? They were always a small minority.
Yeah.
But not a majority. Even at the height of the World War II, there were only 5 million out of 80 million members of the Nazi party. But else, it's a silent majority. Then I think, Gary, maybe it's true, but I think that if we have the ability to show that there is a validity in being a non-belonger, okay, I think we can help people see, that being the silent majority is very, very silly. Because invariably, if you look at history everywhere, it's always those people, the group mind, the group thinkers, the hive mind, that had a fanatic spasm with a unscrupuled, horrible monster at the top. And they follow, and all the other people that see, I don't know anyone that is a right-wing person. I live in New York City, and I'm now in my country home in Massachusetts. There's no one I know that ever voted, for Trump. If I did, I wouldn't probably see them again. But there are many people like that in the United States, and yet they're cowed into saying it. And the things that are happening now are unbelievable. And follow the textbook, of dictatorships and so on. And yet the silent majority don't say anything. And I think it's because they feel that there is there's no, I don't want to say about, any other country, but there's no such thing as United States. There's no such thing as Germany or Somalia. There's no such thing as money. There's no such thing as power. All of those things are conventions that we invented. They don't exist in nature. And we invented them, and we abide by them mindlessly because we were taught that this is right and this is wrong. And just how it happens, it's like religion. There are like 800 gods. Who's right? How come, their God is stronger? It's silly. The whole idea is, I'm not against, religion. You could do whatever you want, but the idea that there is something that unites people, that really doesn't, it's not there. I want to say something. Yuval Noah Harari, him is, it's a great thinker. I highly recommend to. But he once wrote that if he, went to a monkey that has a banana and say to the monkey, listen, here's $200,000 in cash. The monkey will think you're crazy, or you think he's an idiot. You want to give him paper for a banana, So, but that is true. That is how we think, We assign
value,
importance and value to things that are not, for me, a flag is a piece of cloth, we imbue in symbolism, communal symbolism, things that don't exist, and let's say you're willing to, not you, not me, but to be killed for something, just because you were born there. What happened if you were, let's say, adopted at birth by, Syrian parents, okay? You probably would be Muslim and be, and they'll say, oh, here's, the redhead, Syrian. There are actually, and you'll be Syrian. You'll kill, for Syria, you'll die for Syria. All the things. We're not born like this. That is my argument. And it's true. Yeah. Go and look at any baby. If you find a baby that is religious, that is nationalistic, that believes in race, that wants money, you go with the baby, say, here's money, give me the bottle.
We impart those things onto the young. It's a really it's a fascinating conversation, Rami. I'm conscious of time, but what I will do is I wrap every episode up on my podcast by thanking people for giving me their time, energy, and just their vulnerability, really, because it's unscripted. I go with the questions that I feel to try and get as a natural conversation as possible. But if you are listening to the podcast, I highly encourage you, even if you don't identify with otherness or othervert, I encourage you to read this book, The Gift of Not Belonging. It's a fantastic book. It's, as I said, it helped me feel seen, and it might do some wonders for you as well to try and get another perspective. Rami, thank you so much for giving me all your time and energy today. It's been absolutely fascinating. I've loved every second speaking with you. Thank you so much.
And let's hope it's not the last time we speak.
For sure, Rami. Thank you again.